Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of CX Conversations. Today we are talking e-commerce in the B2B sector, and happily I have someone with me who literally spends every waking moment thinking about this stuff. It's our Director of E-commerce, Tim McMillen. Hi Tim.
Morning, Matt.
Let's kick straight into it then. Why does e-commerce matter in the B2B sector?
I think over the last few years there's been a real change and drive within B2B organisations to adopt e-commerce channels. And there's probably three factors that are primarily driving that. First off, I'd say it's that realization that the buying personas within B2B have changed and they've evolved. We are seeing more people from like millennial and Gen Z generations going into roles of buying responsibility within organizations, and they come with a different set of expectations compared to their predecessors who have got more traditional views on like sales channels and things like that. So there's a lot of research out there about that at the moment, but I'd say the buyer persona shift is one factor. I think increased competition is another factor as well. There's a bit of disruption across most B2B sectors, but there's also a drive for like competitive advantage, and lots of forward-thinking B2B organizations are seeing e-commerce as a differentiator and a way to help them secure longer-term loyalty with their customer base. And then I think finally it's about a drive towards profitability. I think in all sectors the cost of doing business has increased, and servicing those traditional sales channels comes with quite an overhead. So organizations are seeing e-commerce as a great way to kind of try and recover some of that lost margin and to drive more opportunities within their accounts.
Interesting. So if I could summarize, some Gen Zer who's tasked with buying a massive piece of industrial refrigeration equipment is quite happy doing that through an e-com channel, but expects a Netflix style experience while he's doing it.
Absolutely, yeah. B2B buyers today won't want Netflix, not spreadsheets.
I like that. Okay, so given that I guess you'd accept that the B2B sector is probably a little bit behind B2C in terms of embracing e-commerce, like what are some of the mistakes that you've seen as organizations try and implement these channels?
I see a couple of common errors all the time. I think first off, it's thinking they can just copy and paste the B2C business model into B2B and get it out in the wild and it'll be adopted and successful.
Why can't you do that?
Well, B2B is imminently more complex than B2C. There's complex relationships with customers, multi-tiered account level users and roles, contract-specific pricing, all that kind of stuff. That paradigm doesn't really exist in B2C. So if you try and copy that over into B2B, you end up kind of plugging the gaps manually quite a lot of the time, or just causing kind of more friction in the buying journey than you would have done otherwise. And I think the second big mistake that is made is that sometimes people treat it as a bit of a pilot and implement something which isn't integrated with core business systems. And we end up then seeing a lot of manual labor being generated to kind of manipulate product data or to kind of traverse orders through the system in the way they need to be. So forgetting about integrating or not considering the integration needs of a B2B implementation is another big mistake.
I think that's an important point, isn't it? That just launching an e-commerce channel by itself is unlikely to be successful unless it's part of a wider digital transformation and the way it integrates into the rest of the business. And I take your point, it's more complex, it's critical. So how should B2B organizations approach that more wholesale digital transformation?
I think the first place I'd always start is thinking about the customer and the buyers. If this is the first time you're going to be introducing a digital journey or self-service journey, you've got to understand from them what it is that's going to make that successful for them. What are we going to invest in to build to encourage adoption and to make B2B e-commerce worthwhile? And also to remember that you've got to make those experiences personal, because e-commerce in B2B without personalization is just another catalog. And what's going to be exciting enough about that to drive adoption?
Yeah, that definitely doesn't speak to what you talked about earlier in terms of the expectations of the experience of Gen Z and millennials, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you also got to remember that within B2B, you're going to have sometimes multiple people within the buying journey with different roles and responsibilities. So the experience that you offer to someone who's perhaps a field engineer that needs a part on site tomorrow is going to be different to a procurement manager. And thinking about those paradigms within B2B are really important.
So if I'm part of the sales team at a B2B business, is that my job gone?
No, I think that's a common misconception and something which is born out of fear quite a lot within, and it's not just within e-commerce, you see that a lot within digital transformation within B2B. I think the most important thing about the sales teams within B2B organizations is to actually win their heart and minds at the start of the process. If you can get them on board, help them understand how this will be an enabler for them to focus on more consultative selling and to take away some of the admin and the less rewarding sales tasks that go with repeat orders and things like that, and make them feel part of the change. I think that's really key to this. If you can get your sales team to love the e-commerce channel, then they'll go out and root for it and encourage adoption with your customers.
And I guess for most businesses, it's unlikely that the e-commerce channels completely replaces all of their other sales channels, right?
No, it's there to complement and enhance it, not to replace it. And it can do things that your sales team can't really do at scale. So, like if you implement it properly, it can help send signals to your sales team to show when perhaps customers are behaving a bit differently, and they might be exploring new products, or perhaps they haven't ordered on the frequency that they have done previously, so they might be at risk of churn, and all of that can be used to help sales teams prioritize kind of their activities and when to make contact with their accounts.
That's a really good point. It can be seen as an asset for sales team because it gives them a whole load of data that they just wouldn't have had before.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often see that as soon as a sales team really get their head around it and adopt it and drive it and become champions of it, they see the value in their kind of commissions as well, because the overall account spend goes up.
So if you're at the start of a digital transformation journey as a B2B business, like where do you start? What technologies, what platforms should you be considering?
From a platform's point of view, it really does depend. As we've said, the B2B e-commerce requirements can be really complex, and a thorough understanding of those requirements and those business needs and customer needs are required before you can start evaluating technologies. And there are literally dozens to choose from, particularly within just the e-commerce realm. So if you're looking for kind of some general recommendations, I'd say, typically speaking, if you've got a really complicated business model or a really technically complicated landscape within your organization, then a solution like Commerce Tools with their B2B modules could be like the right choice for you. But if you're actually a much more simple organization and you don't have complicated kind of buyer journeys or product management requirements, then something like Shopify Plus with their B2B modules could also be a good option.
And once this is in place, how do you start measuring success and proving the value back to the business?
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that the goal of e-commerce within B2B is not the same as the goal of e-commerce within B2C, where it's all about more customer acquisition and growing share of wallet with individual customers. Within B2B, successful B2B e-commerce is really all about driving operational scale and efficiency through customer self-service, and ultimately then getting high profitability from customer orders and things like that. So in terms of metrics you can look for, it can be around customer adoption, frequency of ordering online, additional kind of revenue opportunities within accounts, and ultimately profitability. That's really the metrics you'd be looking for.
Okay. Going back to the digital transformation that we've discussed needs to happen as part of this evolution for B2B businesses. This is a well-worn mantra, so I won't claim it as my own, but it's often said that digital transformation is not about the technology, it's about the people and bringing them on as part of the processes. So what are some of the challenges that B2B businesses might face in driving that transformation?
I think I often see, particularly in digitally immature organizations, there can be a resistance to change. And the only way you really overcome that is to actually bring everyone into the tent on day one, get them involved in all of the workshops, the planning, the ideas behind it, and helping them to understand why this is valuable to customers, but ultimately showing them that they can be an enabler of this change rather than actually kind of like just a recipient that they're feeling that this change is imposed upon them. And then really demonstrating to them the value of it within their role. How does it help them be more efficient, more productive, focus on the more interesting parts of their role, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point about being able to demonstrate the value. And obviously one of the beauties of implementing e-commerce is the wealth of data we've talked about that can help justify the digital transformation and encourage the business to keep doing more. So what else can you do beyond that?
Well, data is a really key thing, actually. Data is the biggest enabler of e-commerce within B2B, and unfortunately, it's quite often siloed or fragmented across the organization, or even just peppered around in spreadsheets or in people's emails or in perhaps the minds of the sales team. So as part of the enablement of your team through this, you also have to show them how actually operationalizing their data, getting it more centralized and consolidated and unified is actually a real key driver. So that's kind of like getting the data into the e-commerce channel, but then there's the data that can come out of it that can actually drive the insights that you need through this. So once you've got all of that kind of good data landscape and hygiene in place, you can start thinking about tools like more advanced business information suites and predictive analytics and things like that, which can help people make better decisions to support them in their tasks.
Great. Okay, final question. What trends should B2B leaders be looking out for in this space? And I'll limit you to only saying the word AI 10 times.
10? Gosh, okay. Actually, I only need to say it once, but I think that's assuming that our businesses are really mature, and that's not often the case. I think for most organizations that haven't yet got any form of digital self-service or e-commerce capability, this is really a critical time for them to actually start thinking about what the strategy is around it, because they're going to need something in the future. Even if they've implemented some kind of online catalog or kind of stubbed e-commerce channel where you can browse product information but not yet buy, this is an opportunity for those organizations and those that haven't started yet to actually think strategically about what do we want to do with our digital offer moving forward, how are we going to implement it. And they've got to get the basics right. So all those things we spoke about good data, understanding the customer experience, aligning with the operational model to that, and all those kind of things are really important. But if you are a little bit more mature as an organization, there is AI coming down the road, which is going to offer you some opportunities. And that comes with the more predictive analytics, so being able to make personalized recommendations perhaps based upon market trends or supply and demand volumes and things like that. They can be things that can be really useful. But I think perhaps the first place that most organizations will be deploying AI will be perhaps agentic AI tools to help to automate more of those highly manual kind of admin heavy order processing tasks that go on when these orders come in. So taking an order from the inbox and an email through to the ERP system, sometimes that's still copy and paste. So using kind of agentic AI to help process those things, I think is a big thing that will come along.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed or scared by AI, particularly if you've seen the film Terminator 2 Judgment Day, but some of the tools and platforms that you spoke about earlier do the job on your behalf. So as a B2B business, if you're using a platform like Commerce Tools or Shopify Plus, they are already implementing AI processes and agentic AI into those platforms. So it doesn't need to be scary, right? Like those tools are doing the job on your behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. You can make smart technology choices which will have good impacts on your customer experiences, but revolutionize perhaps the way your teams work and engage them in kind of new ideas and new business models. But I think I guess my last thought on this is actually e-commerce in B2B isn't about being flashy. It's actually about being useful to customers and useful to your business as well.
What a brilliant way to conclude. I did say you'd spend all day thinking about it, and you've proved that. Tim, thanks so much. That was really fascinating.
No, thank you very much as well.